All right, so today I'm going to walk you through doing an MLA Works Cited page. We use MLA in English. It's pretty much discipline based. Most humanities use MLA, a lot of sciences use it's APA, but there are probably hundreds of citation systems out there in the world, and so the main thing with citation systems is knowing the tools that are going to help you and knowing how to look up what you need to do, and MLA is no difference. You probably should not spend a lot of time memorizing MLA. You just need to know how to look it up, how to recognize if it's being done correctly. There are a lot of automatic tools like EasyBib and things like that, but you cannot always trust them if you don't know enough about the citation system to recognize if it's doing it correctly. We will definitely work with some of those tools later in the semester, and especially for essay 2. But for this essay, I do want you to try to do the Works Cited page on your own manually. There's only 2 sources. It's not a lot of work. The only reason that this video is 15 minutes long is because I have lots of explanations to give you, like that one. When you're actually making an entry for the Works Cited page, it maybe takes a few minutes tops. So let's get to it. First thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that your page is formatted how you want it to be formatted. I'm working in Pages, but all of these things can be changed in Pages, in Microsoft Word, Google Docs, whatever it is that you're in. So first things first, I'm going to make sure we're on format. We are going to make sure that we are in Times New Roman. This is not the default font for most programs, so you're going to want to make sure you change it to that. Likewise, you're going to want to make sure you are on size 12 font, also not the default size for a lot of programs. So you want to make sure you fix those 2 things first. Next up, you're going to want to make sure that your spacing is double. And this can be done in Microsoft Word if you're using either the paragraph settings box, or sometimes it's up near the top. In Microsoft Word, you'll have like a little thing up here that says paragraph, and there'll be like a tiny little arrow. If you click that, you can change the spacing, you can change the indent, and you can change the paragraph spacing, which is also something you need to do. In Pages, it's all right here on the right. You want to make sure that after is set to 0. This is also not a default setting in Microsoft Word. In Microsoft Word, it's set to 10, so you're going to want to make sure that that's set to 0. You'll want to check your margins. In Microsoft Word, that's under the style. It's up in the upper left, and you can see. In Pages, you just flip over to Document really quick, and your margins might already be set for 1 inch margins. But you want to make sure all the margins are set to 1 inch. Finally, the last thing that you want to do is you want to fix your indent. So if you are in the paragraph settings in Microsoft Word, you can go to indent, go to special, go to the drop down box and choose hanging. If you're in any other program and including Microsoft Word, you can also come up here and play around with the ruler tools. So your ruler, if you can't see it, you can go to view and change to show so that you can see it. You're going to have an arrow and a little bar. You still want your indent to be 1/2 inch, so you drag everything in. You have to drag the whole thing in first. Once you've dragged that arrow in, you can then click on just the little bar and take it back. And that's how you can achieve a hanging indent in almost any word processing program without going into the settings or other tools. We are going to call this a Works Cited. It literally means the works that have been cited in the paper. That is why it's not a bibliography, as bibliographies sometimes contain other things, or they can contain just works that were mentioned in the paper, or all sorts of things. This is a Works Cited page. The Works Cited is just the sources that you have quoted, paraphrased, or summarized in the paper. The title is centered, but our first entry, of course, is not. I'm going to be using an article from the book to work with. So I have the book pulled up here on Amazon, mostly so that you guys can see it. If you have your book at home, you can be flipping through it. But it doesn't matter what type of source you have. So whether it's a print book or a website or a movie or a video game or anything else, what I'm about to show you is the same for any type of source. This is another thing with like the tools, right? Sometimes the tools are asking like what type of source it is and you have to figure that out. It doesn't matter for MLA anymore. So in some ways, sometimes it's easier to do it manually. But we're going to use a article from the book. In a Works Cited page, you have 9 pieces of information that you need to supply for each source. If any of that information is not there, you just skip it. We're going to do author, title of source, title of container, other contributors, version number, publisher, publication date, location. So the main thing that you need to know is what is the difference between the source and the container. The source is the very specific thing that you're using, and the container is the thing which holds it. So therefore, if I found an article on a newspaper online, the newspaper or website is my container, and the article is the specific source that I am using. So when it's asking for the author, it wants the author of your source. So for the book, I don't want the authors that are listed here. They wrote the chapters to the book. I'm not using the chapters to the book. I'm using a specific article. Let's see. The first one that I come to in the reading sections that you're actually using on that you could use on the paper is Why America is Self-Segregating. So I'm going to go ahead and use that one. I could go find the article itself, but this is just a preview of the book, and I have this lovely table of contents here, so I'm just going to work off of that. You always put the last name first. So we have Boyd, comma, Dana. If this was by 2 authors, and there's not any in the book that you'll probably be using that are by 2 authors, but like if we come down here, oh, you know what, there is, because Should Everyone Go to College is an option. They have 2 authors. So if I was doing that one, I would do Owen, comma, Stephanie, last name, first name, and then and Isabel Sawhill. Because there's 2 authors, the second one goes first name, last name. You only put the first author with their last name first, so that you can find them alphabetically. But, you know, I can just go ahead and use this one as an example too. That way you can see that's what it looks like when you have 2 authors. If it was 1 author, you just stop there. So I'm gonna switch over. I'm gonna go ahead and use this Should Everyone Go to College article just because it has 2 authors, and that way you can see how to do that. The next piece of information is title of source. So title of source is, again, it is the specific article name. So Should Everyone Go to College? Quote, Should Everyone Go to College? And I put a period. And I know to put a period because in the list, they have a period here, and they have a period here, and they have commas here. So source information is separated by periods. Container information is separated by commas, and they do that in the list for you, so you know exactly when to switch back over to a period. Next, you want the title of your container. Again, the container in our case is the book. If you're looking at an online article, it's going to be the website. So, they say, I say. Container titles pretty much always go in italics. This is just kind of the basic grammar rules of titles. Articles, short works, they go in quotes. Long or major works or works that contain other works go in italics. If it's not on the cover, it's not important. It's kind of an MLA kind of rule of thumb. So I could just put with readings. I'm going to go ahead, though, because I know that there's a subtitle. I'm going to go ahead and include it. I won't mark you off for not including this because it's not on the cover, and that has always been kind of a MLA standing kind of thing. If it's not on the cover, if you had to kind of dig for it, then same thing with like other, like if there's there's 20 other editors that also worked on this book, but they're not listed, right? So, so the moves that matter. Academic writing. Generally, rule of thumb is you don't abbreviate, so if there is a subtitle, you include it if it's on the cover. If it's not on the cover, that's a reasonable reason to skip it. And we have with readings, period. Next up, we have other contributors. This could mean a lot of things. In the case of our book, it wants to know who worked on the book that contains our source. So we have Gerald Graff, Kathy Birkenstein, and Russell Durst. Now, I showed you what to do when there's 2 people and when there's 1 person. When there are 3 people, you can actually only list the first person. So, get myself out of italics here. So we have Gerald Graff, comma, E-T-A-L. And that would be the same with authors. If I was listing this as an author for my source, it would be Graff, comma, Gerald, E-T-A-L. So again, the only person who goes last name first is the author of the source that gets listed first. That's it. When we're talking about other contributors, that can mean all sorts of things. So you also want to include their job title. So I can say edited by Gerald Graff. And again, I gotta get that out of italics. Alternatively, I could put ed after their names to indicate that that's an editor. MLA doesn't have any specific rules for this anymore. They don't care so long as you're actually giving the job title. So like if you're doing a movie or something like that, then you would put, you know, maybe the actors you want to give credit to. So you would say performances by, and then whoever the main actors are. Next comes up is version and number, which basically this is referring to anything that tells you what kind or what type it is. So if it's a magazine, maybe it's the May 2012 issue, maybe it's issue number 4, maybe there's a specific website version or game version, or there's an addition to a book, or it's the Kindle edition, 4th edition. So that's what it wants, and that's why there's 2 of them. They're almost kind of interchangeable in terms of the type of information that you're putting in there. I'm using the regular print book, so I don't have any kind of special, but if you're using like an ebook or a Kindle edition or a special binder edition, you'd want to put you'd want to include that. However, it is the 4th edition no matter what, and you can either abbreviate that like I just did, or you can spell it all out. 4th edition. Again, MLA doesn't actually care anymore, which is kind of nice. After that, you want the publisher. You can find the publisher on the spine of the book, at the bottom of the title page, or at the bottom of a website page. At the very bottom, it will tell you either who owns the copyright or who is the publisher. So we have W. Norton and Company, comma. Next up, you have publication date, and you want the date that is most relevant to the specific version that you are using. So I want the most recent copyright year, 2018. If I'm on an online article, I want the date that that specific article was published and updated, not the date for the entire website. So it's the date that is most relevant to the specific thing that you're using. So just keep that in mind. Next up, we have location. Don't be fooled by location. What location is asking you for is where is the source inside the container. So you have a book, then they're asking for the page numbers that that source is on. You have a website, they want the URL. So you're just going to copy and paste the URL if it's a web article, and if it's a book, I need to find out what page it numbers my article is on. So in this case, it starts on page 318. For MLA, they do want you to put PP to indicate your page numbers. So it's 318, and then they do want you to tell us the full page range. So this is a table of contents, so it's not listed here, but I know that it ends the page before the next one starts. So that's 35. So 318 to 335, or 318 to 35. And period, as we see in the list here. This is pretty much it. The only other piece of information that you would need is the optional information for when you're doing an online article or source. So then if you are doing an online article, the next thing that it would want is your date of access, and you can see how that is displayed right here. That's the only thing that you need to add for online articles, because online articles can get changed, taken down, edited, removed entirely. And so you want to have the date that you last know that for sure it was at that URL and available online. So I'm just gonna kind of copy and steal this one real quick. So you can see what it looks like when done, and that is it.